What happens when power, ambition, and pride threaten to destroy the very foundation of a marriage? In the Gilded Age Season 4, George and Bertha Russell find themselves standing at the edge of a cliff, their once unshakable partnership now hanging by a thread. The glitter of high society hides cracks that are growing deeper every day, and this season promises to test not only their love but their survival in a world where appearances mean everything. George and Bertha's marriage has always been built on a mix of love and ambition. From the very beginning, Bertha pushed her way into New York's elite circles with George's wealth and determination as her strongest weapons. Together, they became a force that no one dared to challenge. Bertha secured her place in high society, while George built an empire that could rival the old families of New York. To the outside world, they looked unstoppable, a modern power couple of the 1880s. But now, after the events of Season 3, that image is cracking. Behind the walls of their grand mansion, George and Bertha are no longer united. Their marriage has become a battlefield where trust, respect, and even love are being questioned. George, once fiercely loyal to Bertha, can no longer ignore the choices she has made. Her decision to marry off their daughter for social standing has left a wound too deep to heal easily. For George, it was not just about ambition, it was about betrayal. He believes Bertha placed her hunger for status above the happiness of their family, and the bitterness of that choice lingers in every conversation they share. His pride, already bruised by business setbacks and the near loss of his life, makes him less forgiving. A man like George, who built his empire with his bare hands, cannot easily tolerate feeling used, even by the woman he once adored. Bertha, on the other hand, is not a woman who gives up her battles easily. She knows the cost of every victory she has won. For her, securing her daughter's future was not only about ambition, but about survival in a world that never accepted her. Bertha has fought tooth and nail to be recognized, respected, and admired in circles that would rather see her fail. Every decision she makes is tied to that desperate need to prove herself. And now, as she realizes that her marriage may be slipping away, she faces a challenge unlike any other. For the first time, her empire of influence may not be enough to protect what matters most: her relationship with George. What makes this situation even more dangerous is that both George and Bertha are too proud to bend easily. Their love has always been tangled with power, and now that power threatens to consume them. Every word, every glance feels like a battle for control. George's coldness cuts deeper than Bertha expected, while her relentless ambition keeps fueling his doubts. Neither of them knows how far the other will go, and that tension is what sets the stage for Season 4. Will Bertha be able to show George that her love is stronger than her hunger for influence? Or will George finally decide that their bond has reached its breaking point? As whispers spread through New York about George's growing distance from his wife, society itself becomes a silent spectator in their war. Friends, rivals, and opportunists are all watching closely, waiting to see if the cracks in the Russell marriage will shatter completely. Because in the Gilded Age, personal struggles are never truly private. They become weapons for others to exploit. And the moment George and Bertha show weakness, there will be no shortage of enemies eager to strike. The real question is simple yet chilling. In a marriage where ambition has always been the glue, what happens when that very ambition becomes the knife that cuts it apart? Season 4 doesn't just promise conflict, it promises heartbreak, betrayal, and the possibility that one of the most powerful unions in New York might collapse under its own weight. The tension between George and Bertha doesn't exist in isolation. It bleeds into every corner of their world. Their household, once a symbol of unity and strength, is beginning to feel like a stage for an unspoken war. Servants whisper behind closed doors, children sense the unease, and even their closest allies can no longer ignore the frost between them. What was once their greatest strength, their ability to present a united front, has become their greatest weakness. Society is quick to notice cracks in perfection, and in the cutthroat world of the Gilded Age, rumors spread faster than truth. George and Bertha know this, and yet their pride makes it impossible to repair the damage quietly. For George, the betrayal he feels is not simply about Bertha's ambition. It is about principle. He has always been a man of action, someone who built his fortune through risk, hard work, and resilience. His wealth was not inherited, it was earned. That difference has always set him apart from New York's old money families, and it is a source of both pride and insecurity. When Bertha sacrificed their daughter's happiness for status, George felt the sting of hypocrisy. Wasn't their marriage supposed to prove that love and partnership could be stronger than tradition and social rank? To him, Bertha's actions seemed like a betrayal of everything they once stood for. Every time he looks at her, he wonders if she values him as a man or merely as a tool to climb higher. That doubt gnaws at him, turning affection into bitterness. Bertha, however, sees the situation differently. She cannot afford to think with her heart alone. To her, ambition is not greed, it is survival. She remembers every insult, every door slammed in her face, every whispered reminder that she would never truly belong in New York's most exclusive circles. She has clawed her way into respectability, often standing alone against enemies who wanted nothing more than to see her humiliated. Marrying her daughter into influence was not just about power. It was about protection, a shield for her family in a world that shows no mercy. In Bertha's eyes, George fails to see the bigger picture. He sees betrayal where she sees sacrifice. And that misunderstanding builds a wall between them, brick by brick. The danger is that neither of them is willing to step back. George demands honesty, humility, and love. Bertha demands recognition, security, and victory. Both are right in their own way, and both are too stubborn to admit it. That is why their conflict is so dangerous. It is not simply a fight between husband and wife, but a clash between two worldviews. If one of them wins, the other must lose. And in a marriage as high profile as theirs, loss is never just personal. It is public, and it is permanent. As whispers spread about George's coldness toward his wife, society begins to speculate. Some claim George is preparing to separate from Bertha, while others suggest he already has eyes on someone else. The possibility of another woman entering the picture is like a spark thrown onto dry grass. If George is indeed considering moving on, Bertha's carefully built world could collapse overnight. Her rivals would seize the chance to dethrone her, and her influence could vanish in an instant. Bertha has fought too hard to let that happen. And the thought of losing George, not just as a husband, but as her most powerful ally, terrifies her in ways she cannot admit aloud. But George is not the only one wrestling with doubts. His near-death experience in Season 3 has changed him more than Bertha realizes. The assassination attempt, the close brush with mortality, the realization that enemies are always lurking in the shadows, all of it has made him question what truly matters. For George, life feels more fragile now, and love feels more urgent. He does not want to waste what little time he has left trapped in a marriage poisoned by ambition. That urgency drives him toward clarity, but clarity can also be cruel. If he decides that Bertha no longer gives him the love he craves, he may finally find the strength to walk away. What makes the situation even more volatile is the world they live in. In the Gilded Age, appearances are not simply vanity, they are survival. A fractured marriage in the Russell household would not just be a private heartbreak, it would be a public scandal. Their enemies, people like Mrs. Winterton and her circle of social climbers, would seize upon the opportunity, using the cracks in the Russell marriage as proof that Bertha was never meant to sit at the top. And if George allows another woman into his life, Bertha's humiliation would become a weapon against her, destroying not just her reputation, but everything she has built for her children's future. The stakes have never been higher. George and Bertha are standing at the edge of a storm, and the winds are already beginning to howl. Every decision they make will either bring them closer together or tear them apart forever. Pride and love are pulling them in opposite directions, and neither seems willing to let go. Season 4 does not just promise drama, it promises the unraveling of one of the most powerful marriages in New York. A slow and painful battle where victory may feel as hollow as defeat. If George and Bertha's personal struggles weren't enough, the world around them is also conspiring to pull them further apart. Season 4 places them not only in the middle of marital turmoil, but also in a society hungry for their downfall. Power attracts enemies, and the Russells have gathered more than their share. From business rivals who envy George's empire to social climbers who despise Bertha's rise, there are countless people who would celebrate the collapse of their marriage. And with whispers already spreading that George's heart may no longer belong to his wife, those enemies see an opening they have long been waiting for. One of the most dangerous players in this unfolding drama is Mrs. Winterton. Once dismissed as a servant who could never truly climb the ladder, she has now found ways to insert herself into the upper echelons of New York society. Her ambitions mirror Bertha's in many ways, but without Bertha's sense of restraint or loyalty. If rumors are true, Mrs. Winterton may have connections to George's possible new love interest. The thought of Bertha's rival aligning herself with her husband's affections is more than just insulting, it is devastating. It would mean that Bertha is not only fighting for her marriage, but also for her very place in the social order she fought so hard to conquer. George, meanwhile, finds himself torn between duty and desire. His loyalty to his family has never been in question, but his disillusionment with Bertha has created a dangerous void. That void makes him vulnerable to affection from others, to flattery, and to the idea that perhaps there is life beyond Bertha's shadow. For a man who has endured assassination attempts, financial risk, and betrayal, the allure of peace and simplicity is strong. If another woman offers him the tenderness he feels Bertha has denied him, how long before temptation becomes reality? And if it does, would George see it as betrayal or as liberation? The truth is that George's emotional distance leaves Bertha in an impossible position. She is a woman accustomed to winning every battle, but this war is unlike any she has fought before. Her rivals can be outmaneuvered, and society can be manipulated. But how does one outwit the heart of a man who no longer feels the same? Bertha's greatest fear is not losing her title, her status, or her wealth. It is losing the one person who has always been her anchor. Even if George no longer sees it, she knows that their power has always been strongest when they stand together. Season 4 forces her to decide how much of her pride she is willing to sacrifice in order to keep her husband by her side. At the same time, George's obsession with uncovering the truth behind the attempt on his life continues to haunt their household. His investigation pulls him deeper into danger, reviving old rivalries and opening new wounds. For George, finding his attacker is not just about justice, it is about control. The shooting reminded him that even the most powerful man can be brought to his knees, and he refuses to let that vulnerability define him. But as he chases shadows and secrets, Bertha grows increasingly frustrated. In her mind, every hour George spends hunting ghosts is an hour he chooses not to spend repairing their marriage. What she fails to see, however, is that for George, the hunt is a way to fill the emptiness she left behind. This clash between love, pride, and obsession is what makes the Russell marriage feel so fragile in Season 4. Neither of them wants to appear weak, and yet weakness is everywhere, hidden behind George's silences, masked beneath Bertha's smiles, and echoed in the whispers of their enemies. The line between love and resentment is growing thinner by the day, and one wrong step could tip them into disaster. What makes their story so gripping is that the outcome feels uncertain. Will George rediscover the love that once bound him to Bertha, or will he embrace a future without her? Will Bertha finally realize that her hunger for status cannot replace the intimacy she is losing, or will her ambition blind her to the truth until it's too late? The possibility of divorce looms, like a storm cloud over every interaction they share. And in the Gilded Age, divorce is not just scandalous, it is catastrophic. For George, it would mean exposing his private pain to a society that feeds on gossip. For Bertha, it would mean humiliation beyond imagination, the destruction of everything she has sacrificed for, and the vindication of every rival who ever doubted her. But the more they fight, the more inevitable that outcome begins to feel. Their story is no longer about ambition or influence. It is about survival. The survival of their marriage, their legacy, and their place in a world that shows no mercy to those who falter. Season 4 makes one truth painfully clear. Love is fragile, pride is dangerous, and even the strongest partnerships can break when the weight of ambition becomes too heavy. George and Bertha Russell may have once been unstoppable, but now they are standing on the brink of a fall that could change everything. As Season 4 unfolds, the cracks in George and Bertha's marriage are no longer private wounds. They are turning into open scars that everyone around them can see. What once seemed like small disagreements now feel like battles, and every encounter between them carries the weight of unresolved pain. Their children, their servants, even their closest friends, all begin to notice the shift. The Russells have always thrived on presenting themselves as untouchable, but now the illusion is breaking. And in a world where perception is everything, that illusion may be the one thing they cannot afford to lose. For George, the question of love becomes unavoidable. Can he still love a woman whose ambitions have driven them apart? The bitterness he feels is not something that can be easily dismissed, and it grows stronger with each passing day. His pride has been wounded, his trust betrayed, and his patience tested beyond measure. To George, Bertha's hunger for recognition has turned into a poison that seeps into their marriage. He begins to wonder if he has spent too long sacrificing his peace of mind for a partnership that no longer feels like home. And yet, despite all of his doubts, there remains a part of him that cannot let go. Their history together, their victories side by side, their moments of true affection, they haunt him as much as her betrayals do. That conflict makes George unpredictable, and unpredictability is dangerous in both marriage and business. Bertha, meanwhile, is fighting her own war. To the world, she appears confident, still dressed in elegance and speaking with authority, but behind closed doors she is desperate. She knows George is slipping away, and the thought of losing him terrifies her more than she will admit. For all her ambition, Bertha has always drawn strength from their bond. Without George, her empire feels fragile, her power incomplete. And so, she begins to shift her strategy. The woman who once cared only for climbing higher now tries to soften, to remind George of the love they once shared. But for Bertha, vulnerability is a weapon she has rarely used, and wielding it now feels unnatural. Every gesture of affection she makes seems to be met with coldness, and the harder she tries, the more impossible it feels to reach him. Complicating matters further are the whispers about George's potential new interest. Whether true or not, the rumors alone are enough to fuel Bertha's fears. The possibility that another woman could replace her is a humiliation she cannot bear. Her rivals, especially Mrs. Winterton, would seize on such an opportunity with merciless glee. To Bertha, the mere suggestion of George moving on feels like a death sentence, not just for their marriage, but for her entire standing in society. It is not only about love, it is about survival. She knows that if George abandons her, the entire world will view her as a failure, a woman who fought her way into power only to be cast aside. And Bertha Russell is not a woman who accepts failure. George's investigation into his attempted assassination adds another layer of chaos to their lives. His obsession with finding answers consumes him, pulling him away from his family even further. Every meeting with allies, every late-night strategy session, every whispered name on his list of suspects, each one drives him deeper into isolation. For Bertha, this feels like another betrayal. Instead of focusing on repairing their relationship, George is chasing shadows. What she does not see, however, is that his search is not only about vengeance. For George, uncovering the truth is his way of regaining control in a life that feels increasingly uncertain. If he can solve this mystery, perhaps he can remind himself of the strength and clarity he once had. But this obsession only deepens the divide between them, making reconciliation feel even further out of reach. The danger of their conflict lies not only in the possibility of divorce, but in the collateral damage it threatens to create. Their children risk being pulled into the storm, their household risks falling into disarray, and their business and social alliances risk collapse. In a society that thrives on weakness, every crack in their marriage becomes ammunition for their enemies. Friends may turn into foes, rivals may grow bolder, and allies may distance themselves to avoid scandal. The Russell name, once a symbol of power and unity, begins to tremble under the weight of uncertainty, and yet, beneath all the chaos, there remains a flicker of hope. George and Bertha's love, though wounded, has not been entirely extinguished. Their history together is filled with triumphs that were only possible because they stood side by side. The question that lingers is whether that bond is strong enough to survive betrayal, pride, and ambition. Can Bertha prove that her love for George outweighs her desire for status? Can George forgive a wound that cut him so deeply? Or has too much damage already been done for their marriage to recover? Season 4 teases us with the possibility of both salvation and destruction. Every argument feels like it could be their last, every tender moment like a final chance. The suspense lies not in whether they will fight, but in whether they will survive the fight. Because for George and Bertha Russell, the cost of losing each other is not simply heartbreak, it is the destruction of everything they have built, the unraveling of their legacy, and the end of one of the most powerful unions of the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age Season 4 is shaping up to be more than just another chapter. It's a turning point. George and Bertha Russell are standing on the edge of a choice that could define not only their marriage, but their entire legacy. Will love triumph over pride, or will ambition push them toward a divorce that could shatter their empire? Every whisper in New York, Every rumor in society, every secret from the past is waiting to collide. And the answers will only come when the season unfolds. One thing is certain, the glittering world of the Gilded Age hides more shadows than ever before. George and Bertha's future has never been more uncertain, and the fallout from their choices could change everything for the Russell family. Stay tuned, because the drama is only just beginning.